Welcome to another episode of Whoa, can't talk today. Canopy Practice Success. Say that 5 times fast. I'm here with Rusty Fulling. Hi, Rusty.
Hey, good to see you, Casey. I'm glad you didn't have me say that because you did a much better job than I would have.
Oh, well, I say it who knows how many times, and that's the first time I feel like I've actually stumbled.
There you go. There you go.
Anyway, Rusty, give a quick intro of yourself before we hop into the exciting topic today.
Yes. Hey, Rusty Fulling, based out of the Kansas City area. I started to practice Fulling management and accounting back in 2000, so coming up on 25 years, and we focus on really that fractional CFO piece for clients around the country, and just really coming along business owners to help them get clarity, grow their profits, and gain peace of mind.
I love it. Say that one more time because that is
Yep.
your vision statement, your
Yeah,
mission.
exactly. Yeah. It's get clarity, grow profits, and gain peace of mind. And it's funny, Casey, on that, we probably weren't the instigators of that, but those are the things that we kept hearing from clients. Hey, I have
Mm,
clarity now. Our profits are growing. I can sleep at night. And so sometimes when you're working on those mission statements, sometimes it's your clients that'll tell you those. And so be sure and listen for that input instead of putting together some big paragraph, what our mission is.
oh, I love that. Well, speaking of, right, so
Yeah.
you've gone through an evolution within your firm. Give a little background on you've been in business for about 25 years now.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot. Let's maybe talk about like maybe your first 5 years in your career and move forward until we get to today's larger topic, and
Yeah.
we'll tease it for the audience is
Yes.
managing culture in a virtual environment.
Oh
Hot
boy.
topic.
Yes. Well, a lot of therapy those first 5 years. I came from a traditional CPA firm, and the traditional firms, 60, 70, 80 hours a week if you're lucky.
Mm,
And I tell you, I was just burned out, Casey. I
yeah.
literally ended up in the hospital.
Oh,
Just my body was just shutting down because of just so much stress. And I remember sitting down with a coworker, and they said, "I can't believe you haven't started your own business." And it was just the belief from a friend who just gave that affirmation. And so sure enough, April 1, 2000, launched the business with three little clients. And what's fun is one of those little clients are one of our biggest clients today. And but it was just that slow growth, literally for the first 10 years. Our goal, and I know you've done some marketing and things, don't get too excited about this. Our goal was to add one new client a year, one new client
okay.
a year. So you're like, oh my
Good.
goodness. But with that,
Realism is a thing. Realism, I mean, and it's
yes,
so good, and if you
yes.
exceed, then it's
Yes,
a party.
if that's right, if you're still alive. But what's really neat about that model that I've really grown to appreciate, and we've upped the number since then, but we've really gone deep with those clients. And when I talk about that client that we started with, that's still a growing client today, it's that going deep. And sometimes when you go deep, you don't have to go as wide, and you really
Mm,
get to make a difference with those clients. And so
yeah.
so that's been our model since day one. But yeah, definitely a lot of rice and beans to begin with, a lot of lean times. But just I think just that consistency, just staying with that vision or that mission, was kind of that was really what kept us
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. I mean, so by nature of going from 3 clients to, I mean,
Yeah.
do you want to
Yeah, we're
disclose how
probably
many you have
probably
today?
60 clients. Yeah, probably 60 clients today.
Okay.
And so again, we're not and then we're not a traditional tax firm, so we're again just doing
Yeah.
more of that client advisory services. But our growth goals these days will be like 15 to 20 a year. And so almost more one a month, one
Mm.
to two a month versus one a year. And so try to get a little more realistic around growth in that area.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of change going
Yeah.
from, like we said, 3 to 60
Yeah.
clients. What have been some of your, maybe we start with worst executed changes, and they can be
Yeah.
anything,
Yeah.
to some of the best changes you've made?
Yeah. Yeah. One of our still painful changes that we have made because of this. We brought on the biggest client we'd ever brought on, probably year 7 or 8. Literally doubled
Okay.
our business overnight, and it was just exciting. And we're cruising, shopping for a new vehicle, all those kind of things. Within 6 months, Casey, we lost that client. We had never lost a client for any kind of service issue, and we lost this massive client. And I mean, oh, you talk about just the wind, getting kicked out of you there.
Yeah.
And part of that was that client was way out of our league. It was way
Mm.
too big. And so when you talk about best practices, lessons learned, where have you pivoted or made those changes? Identifying our ideal client. And so
Yes.
just, yes, taking some time to go back to the proverbial whiteboard and just saying, who do we serve well? Who do we like to work with?
Yeah.
And it was interesting in that exercise, a lot of the attributes were around the leader attributes: high integrity, well respected, sees value in outsourcing, those type of things. And so even today, my goodness, 10, 15 years later, we still use those attributes as a checklist before we even look at the business, the size of business. And so the leader is first, and then we typically look for 1 to 50 employees, probably 1 to 20 million in revenue kind of companies.
Yeah.
But that was a clarity moment maybe for
Yeah.
us that just made such a difference.
Man, I read a book years ago. If you haven't read it, it's a good read called Essentialism.
Yes, yeah,
Have you read
McCowan,
it?
McCowan. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah,
And the thing that I was left with, and I mean, this is probably a decade or more that I've read it now.
yeah.
If it's that old, man, I'm gonna laugh if it was only written 9 years ago.
There you go. There you go.
um, it's just the idea that if you really can't say yes to everything, but
Right.
what you're saying yes to, you are saying no to other things. And I think that is
Yeah.
such an important concept
Yeah.
applied in this instance, right, to clients and who you're
Yeah.
engaging with in business, because you might see things, and or early on it might be
Yeah.
scary to say no, or
Yes.
you might have a few years under your belt like this
Yeah.
situation, and you see someone and you're like, ooh, shiny dollar
Yes.
signs or whatever,
Yes.
and you want to say yes, but
Yeah.
reminding yourself, and if you
Yeah.
can't remind yourself, creating
Yeah.
these characteristics, this standard checklist sort of thing of
Yeah.
like what your ideal client profile or your ICP. This is something I really like to talk about because I
Yes.
think it's so important in business in general.
Yes. Yes.
Is makes it easier for you to say no appropriately.
Absolutely. And we actually developed a couple personas that we call Bio
Mm.
Bob and Bio Beth. And Bio Bob and Bio Beth are kind of our, here's who our ideal client is. The other thing, Casey, I think that's been so helpful is there was a book called The Pumpkin Plan by Mike
Huh.
Michalowicz.
Okay.
And the Pumpkin Plan talked about sometimes you'll have these clients, these ideal clients that you really want to focus on, but then you have a lot of little clients that are just taking your energy, and they're
Mm.
just not the right clients, and they just
Yeah.
suck the life out of the big pumpkins, the ones that you really want to focus on. And sometimes
Oh, I like that
you need
metaphor.
to prune sometimes
Yes.
those clients that are taking up the time. So I remember we'd read this book as a group, and our first pruning was a 6-figure year client for us. And I thought,
Wow.
oh my goodness, this is a $100,000+ a year client, and we're going to prune this client. And the manager on that client was just going, "Are we sure? Are we sure?" Well, in that pumpkin plan, it has some great models as far as what things are. Do they pay on time? What's the UG factor? Oh, when Casey calls, do we go UG? Is Casey again? Or yeah. And so and it was interesting going through that, and you could easily identify they've either grown into a non-ideal client, or maybe they weren't one to begin with, but we went ahead and brought
Mm.
them on. So now
Yeah.
we actually do that on an annual basis. And so that the reason we don't have multiple clients that are just chaotic is we say, you know what, let's work with the ones that we can work well with best, and we're going to serve best.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. The nice thing about that too is, you're not just keeping um up with like your own personal standards.
Yeah.
But actually by doing that, you're also communicating something to your employees, which keeps morale high.
Yes.
And in a
Yes.
day and age where talent is hard to come by,
Yeah.
that goes a long way with your talent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. They know what to expect. They know,
Yeah.
they're not going to be taken advantage of or
Yeah.
talked down to, or, and so absolutely that has been a big factor there.
Yeah, or even empowers them to come to you and say, "Hey, I
Mm,
think we've reached a point," even if it's not at that
yes.
annual review, but they already
Yes.
know because it's
Excellent.
something that's been
Yes.
established within the business as part of your
Yeah.
identity.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. That's a huge, I'd say, advantage. And even when we're looking at new clients, they already know who's going to be a good fit up front. So that has been helpful. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so we talked about some of these changes that, kind of like a, hey, learn from my mistake, don't make the
yeah.
mistake yourself. What on the opposite end of the
Yeah.
spectrum, what have been one or two of the best changes you've
The
made?
best changes. Oh my goodness. What I would say one I can think of early on, and another one I'll mention as well, but learning to tell the story of the numbers and not just present the numbers.
Mm,
I remember working with a large physician group years ago, and we had this 20-page financial report that would put anybody to sleep. I mean, it was horrible. And you'd see the eyes glazing over until page 13. 13 was the bonus page. Hey, what am I getting as a bonus? Why are we spending all this time on pages 1 through 12 when they just want to see
mm.
the bonus page? And so sometimes it's telling the story. Here's what pages 1 through 12 is really telling us. Let's look at 13. That's the KPIs you guys want to be looking at. And so I think that's part of it is just discerning. We often talk about being a CFO is like being a GPS and helping
Mm.
guide where they're heading, as opposed to an old map where you're going, this road, it must be closed, And so, and so it's I think that's been helpful. The other thing is when COVID hit, we were a brick and mortar firm, and we sent everyone home, and just seeing how well the team did in that time, we just never invited anybody back to the office, and so we ended up going totally virtual, and it was one of those you kind of get pushed out of the nest, and you're going, hey, we're flying well, and why go back and do something just because.
Okay, tell me more about this because this is where again we kind of teased that we wanted to spend most of our
Yeah,
time. Few questions then
yeah.
that I feel like I hear often come up, not just in accounting, but in my industry as well.
Sure. Yeah.
How do you know they're being productive? How do you know they're not just
Mm,
playing beach volleyball? I don't know.
yes.
Um,
Yes.
how do you maintain culture? How do you feel
Yeah.
close to each other? How do you communicate? Um, how long, I mean, did you get rid of the brick and mortar? All of these questions that are really talked about right now.
Yeah, I remember prior to COVID, I was asking all those, what if they're doing laundry during the day and then they're not getting their work done? I thought that's crazy. That'd just be horrible. And it's so fun. I think these days, the other thing that I'd always get all amped up about is if you had a kid walking in the background while you're having a meeting, or a dog or a cat, and you're just going, oh, this is not professional. And what's really cool, Casey, is people are inviting us into their homes now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And boy, what well, we use the word intimacy. There's just a
Yeah.
more intimate connection because I mean, my goodness, I'm inviting you into my space, and for this
Yeah.
work environment. So I think sometimes we can get wrapped up on if you're worried about them doing laundry and you're worried about them playing video games, maybe it's the hiring process that's wrong, and not the environment that's wrong, not the culture
Yeah.
that's wrong. And so I would say definitely spending more time on that culture development, and yeah, we can unfold that a little bit more. But we were actually in a beautiful facility before COVID hit, and it was an incubator facility where there were new companies coming in all the time, and so it was a great feeder for our business. And so, yeah, when we sent everybody home, that was a concern. How do we maintain this? And we just found other ways to connect with folks. But mental health was a big deal during that time, as
Yeah.
far as isolation and
Yeah.
how do you work on that. So one of the quick things we did right off the bat was we established a buddy system where we just
Oh, I love that.
Casey, you connect with Rusty, and hey, just check in each day. How are things going? And so that was more on a personal level. And then throughout the day, there's going to be
How many
interactions throughout
people
the
are in
team.
your firm?
We have 18.
Okay. Okay.
So, and so that's been helpful. And then our Tuesday morning staff meetings, it's an all play, so everybody's joining that. We started doing a lot more leadership and culture teaching during those staff meetings, and even
Mhm.
breakout sessions for discussion groups and those kind of things. And so it's amazing doing some of those, just being more intentional about teaching around leadership. Then we bring everybody into Kansas City once a year for a big celebration time in some strategic planning and some serving time. And that is like a high school reunion, getting everybody together. It is
How
so much fun.
Yeah, where are people
Yes.
located? How far
Yeah.
apart?
So I think we're in about 7 states right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And one of our team members, when we went totally virtual, sold their home and lived in an Airbnb for 24 months all over the world.
Ah,
And so, just if you think about just the ability to do that, that was a dream that their family had. And boy, it just, if you're not so hung up with them being chained to the desk
yeah.
and right there, yeah, we've gotten a lot. I'll say we've amped up our team member quality, maybe would be a good word, just because of those kind of things, being able to
Yeah.
provide some of that flexibility.
Being someone who does have a hybrid work environment,
Yep.
I would never go back to a job
Yes.
where they asked me to be 100% in office. I'm a
Yeah.
young mom.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love the flexibility it affords me. I
Yeah.
love that I can not commute and
Yeah.
instead, adjust my day accordingly, either hop on a
Yeah.
little earlier or
Yes.
get on my bike and drop my kindergartner off. It's those affordances and I feel like to remote work, what it does is um, it exposes, to your point about like being on a Zoom and seeing kids in the background or whatever it might
Right.
be, exposes us to each other's humanity more.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And when we feel we're seen more that way and when we see others that way,
Yeah.
I feel like we have a deeper connection, a deeper sense of
Yeah.
loyalty, even in some sense. I don't think we all need to give loyalty to our employers per se,
Yeah.
but to each other as
Yeah.
humans. And to think that like this employee's you empowered this employee to fulfill an awesome dream,
Mm.
and how much more are they willing to put in the not just time
Yeah.
but good effort, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
being and producing quality work
Yeah.
for the firm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's so much fun. One of the things we've found helpful is during our staff meetings is do shout outs when we first start
Mhm.
out, and you've probably seen that before. Hey, Casey did this great job on this project, or, but also weekly wins. And the weekly wins is really an all play, hey, what was something
Yeah.
good that happened this week? And then the last thing I'll mention on this is each pay period. So we have our team members submit their time and so forth for billing and different things, but they'll send me a note as part of our payroll system that, again, what was their personal high of the pay period and what was their personal low. And it could be, hey, I had this great meeting with this client, or hey, my kid just hit the winning, home run at the baseball game, or it could be, oh, we just suffered a really tough loss in our family. And again, you talk about humanity, those help me stay connected to the team, and it also gives me opportunity to reach out to the team, especially on those sensitive things, or even celebrate. And so I think that how can we incorporate humanity into the number crunching environment, and those have been helpful for our team.
Yeah. So yeah, any of those the things that you've done, you mentioned a few, being intentional, right? Leadership meetings,
Yes.
the buddy system.
Yeah.
I'd love an example of how you feel like those activities in a remote environment has really benefited the productivity of your firm?
Yeah. Well, and I will say, one of the questions I think you and I talked about even before we were coming on board, but how do you know people are working?
Mm,
I think even in a brick and mortar building, I think you need to make work visible. And just because you can see somebody sitting down the hall, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not, playing video games. And so tools like Canopy, which is a workflow management system, I think those are so helpful because we can easily get on and see what projects are outstanding, and we use that type of system to when we meet individually with each team member to, hey, how are we doing, this week on this client, and we can look at those things. So I think that's part of that exercise. But one of the comments we've gotten from multiple team members, new team members that have come on board over the last 4 years, is they say, I feel closer to my team here than I ever did when I worked in an office space. And so you
wild. Why?
you,
What
you
have they said?
well, and it goes back to, I'll say, kind of the 3 I's is what we talk about: invest in your team weekly, and that's the shout outs, the culture lessons. So we bring in every week a speaker from the outside on video to teach about. I'm trying to think what we're talking about this week. It could be communication. How to be a better communicator. It could be how to. Oh, what's your personal mission? And so, if you think about it, if you're then breaking into small groups and talking about that, my personal purpose is, for me, it was encourage, guide, equip, serve, and listen. Okay. And so those are kind of my 5. If I can do those throughout the day, boy, that's a good day. And so each of our team members came up with some of their own. But if you think about that, I mean, we're not talking about balance sheets and reconciliations and some of those
Yeah.
kind of things in that section. Yes, we are later in the week, but we're just giving, again, that humanity, that, hey, how are things going kind of stuff. So th- that's made a world of difference, Casey. I sure don't get all the credit for that because we've got a great team that, has brought ideas to the table, and we've seen other companies that do similar things as well.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think, again, it's just the being seen as a human and then allowing other people to show up as a human. Like I
Yeah.
get to see my boss as a human as well as my
Yeah.
coworkers. It just
Yeah.
adds something that may not, I don't feel like it's always been there in a work environment,
Right.
depending on the industry and stuff throughout the
Yeah.
last 100 years. I think it is
Yeah.
something that we're finding to be more unique in this post-COVID era,
Hmm.
especially if people are choosing to embrace remote or hybrid work.
Yes, yes, yeah, we love it. The One of the things too we've really started pushing is more our core values, and
Mm,
our core values can be a very good recruiting tool, but you have to live those core values too, and so that's been helpful to go through those, and we even evaluate on a quarterly basis. The team members actually do self evaluation. How am I doing on each of these values? and,
mhm.
and so that can be helpful. That way, you have a good foundation in which you're building the company from.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like so a phrase, I feel like I've said this on the podcast multiple times. But something I really ascribe to is the sentiment of slowing down to speed up.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
seems like one of those areas where it's like, okay, if you slow down
yep,
and take the time to think of core values, mission statements, and in the right way, ICPs, your ideal client
yeah,
profile,
yeah,
it enables you to go faster. And it seems
yes,
like it might be maybe I think it's hard for any business owner, to be honest, aside outside of
yeah,
accounting, inside of accounting. Um, but take a think week, maybe,
yeah.
and work on these things because it will only better your business.
Yes. We kind of have 5 lessons. Somebody asked me, "Hey, what are some lessons you've learned?" One is being intentional.
Mm,
Mission, vision, values. That is so big. And number 2 would be patient. You look at somebody who's been in business 25 years, you go, oh, I wish I could be, I want to be them. I want to be that. And you're just starting out. Boy, it
yeah.
hasn't always been easy. And so be patient, be a difference maker. If it's all about you, it's going to be short lived. But boy, if you can make a difference in others and clients and team members, that's going to be big. And number four would be a lifelong learner. So continue to learn. Don't get complacent in that. And the last one is be still. Take time to just be still and take time. What you just talked about, maybe a week, maybe it's just a day, something to just take some time to celebrate where you've been, focus on where you're heading, and maybe it's bringing in a coach or a mentor in some of those times too.
Man, how did you survive before you opened your firm and found all of these things? I feel like you're just laying it out so clearly. And I hope other people are able to hear this and take advantage of it. Those that, might be in the thick of
Mm.
those long work weeks, or
Yes.
the threshold of
Yeah.
deciding whether or not they want to start their firm, or maybe they just started their firm and they're
Yeah.
drowning. But this
Yeah.
perspective that you're offering, I think, is just so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the things that I always look for, and I may have mentioned it earlier, but the kind of the three C's: the coach, the cheerleader, and the community. And if you don't have those three, that can really be lonely. And because if I don't have somebody to go to when I'm struggling on how do I lead well, or somebody to challenge you, maybe you're not leading well, and here I need to maybe some accountability. But that coach, cheerleader, somebody to cheer you on, and a
Yeah.
community, those can be so vital. So yeah, I'd encourage anybody that's starting out or trying to figure out, do I even keep this thing going, or how do I
Yeah.
grow from here? Yeah, those would be some three things to maybe look at investing in.
Well, more than three things. You've dropped like 20 things that are
there,
just
there you go.
great gems to hold on to. Okay, last question. If you came across someone who's really skeptical of going virtual or even hybrid, what would be your pitch? Why would you say, you know what, if you went, you'd be more
Yeah,
productive? What would you say to them?
yeah. I think there's somebody was talking about imitation or inspiration. I think there's things that we've talked about today that hopefully can be inspiring, and maybe it's not, you don't have to go virtual to do everything that we've talked about.
Fair.
I would be cautious to say, yeah, go virtual and you can do it just like this. So if you're struggling with going virtual, maybe you shouldn't do it. So I want to be realistic there. We've just found for our model, it's worked well. We're recruiting right now for our next fractional CFO,
So if
and
you want
so,
to work fully
yeah,
virtual,
please, virtual fractional CFO. Hey, the cool thing, Casey, is guess where our workforce is? Anywhere in the U.S. And
yeah.
so we're not stuck just in this one little area, and so that's been so much fun is bringing in great talent from all over. So that's one plug though, as far as hey, what's a benefit? You don't have a limited workforce,
Yeah.
and I think putting in tools, don't just leave people on islands. Make sure you're intentional about building a community, having people say, wow, I feel closer to my team members here than I ever did in person. Those are the things that I would encourage you to strive for if you are looking at a virtual model. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and to that point to it, we didn't call this out explicitly, but for some reason my brain is like, Casey, call this out. It's just that, okay, we're saving dollars, actual money, on not having a brick and mortar. But remind yourself that not just to save that money, but to squirrel it away for things like bringing the whole
Yes.
team together.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling that out, because so many people, oh, you've saved so much money. And I'm guessing we've probably spent more,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
because
It could be. Yeah.
Casey, we're preparing right now. I don't know when this will drop, but we're preparing right now for our virtual Christmas party. And our parties are second to none, even in a virtual world. And you're going, how do you do that? We have an incredible team that puts those on. And so it's so much fun to see what you can do in this environment that, 4 or 5 years ago, I'd be going, that's, that's not even, going to work. So anyway, those, you can definitely do it. And there's so many tools out there these days that make it lots of
Yeah.
fun.
Don't do it to save money. Don't do it
Yeah,
if you feel
yeah,
forced to do it,
yeah,
but that there are great benefits to it, especially if
yeah,
you feel like it will serve your business model, you, your firm members.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for your time today, Rusty.
You bet. Hey, it's good to see you. We'll talk to you soon.